Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on Friday here at Redlands, and we are, well, it's towards the end of the day, and I did judging yesterday on Thursday, and then today I've been wandering around and buying stuff, and then hanging out with a bunch of folks in the awarded orchid tents, and I'll show you some photos here. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm going to do some walking around now and show you some of the vendors, and let's just see some sights. So this is right here at the entrance. You can see tons and tons of orchid vendors, which are there in the tents. Then you can see lots of people purchasing plants inside the tents, and then when you take a peek inside the tents, it's just like this. Like, it's just all these different types of orchids, the different genera, the different species, the different hybrids, just roots hanging down, plants hanging out, looking amazing. And then if you get closer to the middle here, this is where the music was, and it's this sort of roundabout, and the food vendors are more to my right. But then as I'm walking down the walkway here, you can just see more and more vendors, more people, more selling, more buying, more really cool stuff. You know, if there is an orchid that you want, there's a really good chance that it was somewhere at this event. And to be honest, maybe that's the problem, is there's so much stuff, it's so overwhelming. This is BL Orchids and Maintenance. If I was going to get into Vandas and Renanthras and other Vandaceous, I think I'd probably spend a lot of money at this tent. I don't have those right now, but he just has really cool stuff. If you're really into those vibrant red colors, I mean, it was absolutely amazing. So then, you know, this is NT Orchids, and you just see boxes of Phalaenopsis species. And then, you know, if you're into anthuriums and those types of leafy things that I don't care about, there's plenty of those there. Here is Orchideas del Valle from Colombia, and they have everything from small bulbophyllums to pleurothalids and cattleyas and warm growers and cool growers, and you know, each individually wrapped there, and it was a pretty cool tent. I didn't spend a whole lot of time there since I'm not really looking for that type of thing right now, but I figured y'all would be interested. And again, here's just the walkway between the different vendors, and you can see how many people are, the different types. You know, these are looking at dendrobiums right now, and then over here there's a giant Rhynchostylus, and then some oncidiums, some tolumnias right there, and then Rhyncholalia digbyana down the bottom, just a whole box of those, and all kinds of other really neat, unique. There's Podangus dactyloceras, and then Peristeria alata. You know, I mean, we just traveled around the world and looked at different orchids right there, and really cool stuff. Spring water orchids. Tan Nguyen always has a lot of really cool stuff. This was another tent, and I really just wanted to show you the color palette of the different types of Vandas that we see here. From, you can see these purple and light purple ones from Vanda cerulean breeding. I don't recall if those were the species or just hybrids. Next to pinks and yellows, and I think this is Vanda tessellata hybrid, which was incredibly fragrant. I mean, if you're a fragrance person like I am, these newer hybrids that look like that are just potently strong. And then next to these intensely colored, you know, almost basically hand-shaped flowers of these vibrant pinks and purples. And then I came across this incredibly vibrantly colored Cattleya super complex hybrid called Cattleya marissa kubo, and I show a quick shot of the tag here in a second, but it's a complex hybrid with 10 species in the background, including Rupiculus, Laelias, and Sophronitis, and Cattleya dowiana, and a bunch of other Cattleyas. Really cool little thing. Of course, there's just more walls of different stuff. So you can see some vibrantly colored Phalaenopsis in shades of purple, and here's a couple of Phalaenopsis amboinensis, which is, it's sort of a more subtle color, but just can be really cool when you see it in real life as well. I don't know that the camera necessarily picks it up very well. And then of course there's just row upon row of these Cattleya hybrids, these complex Cattleya hybrids. As most of you know, I'm more into the species and primary hybrids myself, but there's just so many of them, and there's so many different colors and shapes. You can certainly get into them, and I can understand why other people are really enthralled by them. This was Krull Smith's tent, and you can see that, of course, they have tons of different Phalaenopsis species. I believe those were Alba hieroglyphicas, and there's Phalaenopsis mannii next to a whole bunch of different Phalaenopsis bellina, which we'll see here in a second. That's actually a mannii. That's the more common color. A lot of the manniis are these sort of dark, solid reds that you'll see. And then, you know, this is the Phalaenopsis bellinas that were picked over. These are the sort of the ones that folks didn't want to purchase by the end of that first day. So, you know, these are quote unquote the rejects. You can imagine how good the other ones were, and of course bellina is potently fragrant, and you stick your nose in there and it just smells so good. I'll probably have to pick up one of those here in the near future. And you can see some of the smaller plants that were blooming. Some of the smaller bellinas were blooming their little hearts out. And then Krull Smith had this gigantic Dendrobium lasianthera, which, you know, had these huge, pretty cool flowers on this gigantic plant that I had to look up at. I'm 6 feet 1 inches tall, and this is way over my head, so this would have been a bear to get home. Krull Smith also had a whole lot of Bulbophyllums, and it was cool to see the different variety of species. You know, these I don't know what species this one is, these yellow ones, but they seem to be in quite a few vendors' tents. Really cool looking little things. I can't quite see the name in the background there, but they also had some Doris Duke hybrids, and you can see the tassels there blowing in the wind. If the wind had blown a little harder, you probably would have been able to see the hinged lip rocking back and forth, and that hinged lip that actually moves is one of the defining characteristics of Bulbophyllums. And I do want to mention that it's Bulbophyllum, not Bulbophyllum. You know, there seems to be a lot of leeway in the names, in the pronunciation of the names that we give our orchids, but for whatever reason, Bulbophyllum is one of the ones that you'll get your hand slapped if you say it as Bulbophyllum instead of Bulbophyllum. Here's one of the little daisy chain that I believe that used to be Ceropetalum, and then of course it got lumped back into Bulbophyllum. These are some buds. These guys haven't quite opened up yet, and this one I believe is a Kinolabium. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but you can see it was growing in the wrong direction, but it's still a very interesting looking orchid. And finally, they had a whole bunch of different Vandas growing on their back wall. Not growing on their back wall, but they were selling them, and you can see there's tons of different colors and shapes and varieties. You know, these vibrantly red next to the orange ones, and the purple ones that have Vanda cerulean in the background. Some really cool stuff, and of course tons of long roots, and they're just growing them out in the air there. Some sunset colors and some lighter colored ones, probably with Sanderiana in the background. Same here with Sanderiana in the background. And it just keeps on going. So if you are into Vandas, this is the show for you. Finally, some Catasetums. There's Catasetum saccatum, and you can see the pollen had been ejected onto the leaf there. got it into focus here a little bit, but they're big flowers. Cicatum is. This is Dentictigrinum. I'm saying that incorrectly, I believe. It's Denticulatum by Tigrinum. And here's some flowers from the award tent. Not all got awards, but there's some pretty cool ones. Final clip for the Redlands video is a haul video. As many of you know, I don't do unboxings, I don't really watch them, so I don't make them, and I don't really make haul videos. But, you know, once a year I get to come to Redlands or Tan Miami or whatever this particular festival is called at this particular time of year. So I'll quickly show you what I got. This is from Afri Orchids. It is Certorchis crassifolia, and is a very cool little angricoid from mainland Africa, actually, and the flowers are absolutely gorgeous. You know, obviously the plant is very small, and the head of flowers can be quite large, and you can see that there's already a spike coming out for this little guy. So we'll see if I can keep this alive over the winter. And hopefully keep those blooms going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set it in a clay pot like this so that it retains a little bit extra humidity over our dry winters. Of course, I went to Sunset Valley Orchids and got to chat with Carlos and some of the folks over there, and I grabbed Varsavixii. That's one that has been missing from my collection for a while, so I got a good one. This is such a great species, and you know, nearly hand-sized flowers that are bright yellow and smell just absolutely amazing. This one has a little spike here. This is a catasetum. This is a primary hybrid between Ivany and Venasium. I can't pull it out right now, but this is a new hybrid, and I don't know that this spike will make it. It looks like it's a little pinched here, and usually when they're pinched at that stage, they're just going to fall off and die. But it goes to show you how small this particular plant will be as a mature plant. So this is not one of the gigantic ones. Both parents are relatively compact. And then over at Peru Flora, I got two. This one was the packaging here was wet, so I'm letting it dry off, and the roots are wet, as you can see. But this is Mormides revoluta, and I am not super familiar with the taxonomic changes that have happened with Mormides, so I have a little bit of homework coming up for me to figure out why it says revoluta in Varsavixii. But it's a nice plant, and you know, acclimating imports is always tricky, but it's just part of the fun for catasetums. And of course, the big daddy of them all, also from Peru Flora, is Cycniches cooperi, and this just goes to show how absolutely gigantic this species gets. You know, I've got the smaller of the two bulbs is larger than my hand. The larger of the bulbs is huge. So again, it's an import from Peru Flora. Getting these guys acclimated can be tricky, but you know, for 30 bucks, I'll take a chance on a monster Cycniches cooperi. All right, bye.